Hey everyone, my name is Tom Daneluik. I'm here with Christian Gersdorff, one of our sales executives here at this dealership. And in today's video, we're actually going to have a live stream towards the Taycan, talking about all of its crazy features and technology that it has towards the vehicle, and of course answering all your questions. Christian, how are you today?
Hey guys, how are you? I'm Thomas.
Awesome. So the first question, the first topic I want to bring up here is obviously you sold the first 918 Spider here in Canada. It was one of the first hybrid vehicles to ever be produced with the Porsche name. And so with that, I wanted to ask you a question. The 918 basically started the movement for Porsche with hybrid and electric technology. How has the 918 technology from 5-10 years ago when it was being built carried into the Taycan EV?
Yeah, I mean, actually, the 918 Spider is kind of the latest version of what they produce for the public use.
Flagship of that kind of technology.
Yeah, you bet. And I mean, obviously, a lot of the technology in that vehicle did transcend into the Taycan. The similar electric motors, and obviously the battery technology, stuff like that. So
for sure. Well, speaking of the battery, I know with the Taycan it has the 800-volt system built into it, which obviously is much larger than the 18 Spider. That's definitely a bigger battery compared to that. But what can this battery, what can people predict with this battery and how it can handle the heavy driving forces that a lot of Porsche enthusiasts or a lot of spirited drivers, we'll call them, can do with this vehicle? How can it handle that and withstand it superior to other EVs out there?
yeah, I mean, that was the focus that Porsche had, is that they knew that the performance of an electric vehicle is incredible, but under heavy use, most of the vehicles will start to lose their charge and their ability to maintain that performance. So Porsche's focus with the Taycan was to actually be able to maintain that level of performance pretty much throughout the entire range of use for the car. So if you do hard launches and drive the car in an aggressive way or in a spirited way, you're not going to lose the level of charge or the level of performance that the vehicle has. It's just going to maintain it all throughout.
Definitely. So they've wanted to definitely carry that from the gasoline vehicle, how its performance is trained as essentially the gas tank gets lower with it, whereas the engine heats up. It'll hit that certain point, of course, like anything else. But the vehicle is still able to maintain it, and Porsche's perfected that with a battery itself.
Yeah.
I think it's super cool. With another thing I wanted to talk about too, with the transmission. With the transmission, we'll talk about that first. Porsche or electric vehicles as a whole don't have a transmission, but the Taycan has a 2-speed transmission over the rear axle. It has that for faster performance or faster lap times, whichever you may be doing. How has Porsche designed that with this electric vehicle?
Oh, I mean, essentially, it's very similar to the dual-clutch gearbox that they're using in all of our other performance vehicles. I mean, obviously, it's just 2 gears, but it's a similar type of technology. And they're the only EV right now in the world that actually has any form of transmission. Everybody else is just using a direct drive because they have so much torque available to them that they can just move the vehicle along without having to have different gear ratios. But Porsche obviously found that having a 2-speed transmission offered a little bit more versatility in the car, so they chose to go that route.
It has that higher performance and obviously has that, holy crap, this is fast, and then the holy crap, this is fast here, right? Backtracking to what I was going to mention earlier, though, is obviously traction control with electric vehicles. Having that instant torque, a lot of vehicles will, once you floor in the vehicle, occasionally spin its tires, but as you get higher up in the RPMs, that's when you get that more power out of the vehicle, where with Taycan, it's instant, right? So how is Porsche able to maintain this vehicle, keeping traction, while having 4 or 5, even 600 pound-feet of torque right off the get-go when accelerating?
Well, that's something that, you've been able to, anybody that drives a Porsche, for example, in any kind of slippery condition like wintertime, you can tell right away that the way that our vehicles are calibrated by the engineers is very different from anybody else out there. All of our competition, you drive our vehicles in the wintertime, for example, and you notice how intrusive the systems are, whereas the Porsche is very seamless, and it only does what it has to help you do what you're trying to accomplish. But obviously with petrol-powered engine, power builds at higher RPMs, so then the wheels, if they lose traction, will typically happen at those higher RPMs, whereas with an electric vehicle, because you have maximum amount of torque available right as soon as you hit the accelerator, they would have to calibrate it in a different way so that it actually will keep the tires from spinning at a lower speed.
For sure, so definitely making sure that you maintain that traction, 0 to X amount of speed that you want to go, but throughout that entire power band, it's always going to be there for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, I've experienced it myself, and it's quite terrifying at times on the Taycan, because when you hit the the accelerator, you
That's going to be a difficult thing for us to get used to over the next 5-10 years.
For sure. So I mean, when you hit the accelerator, the vehicle will have a tendency to spin its tires. Even though it's all-wheel drive and it has a tremendous amount of weight on top of those tires, it can spin them like that. So, but the way that system kicks in and helps regain control while not ruining the driving experience for you is really quite incredible, because you feel like the car just kind of grabbed and took off. You don't realize how much is actually going on with the car, because, like I say, the engineers have calibrated it so well that it's just incredibly seamless.
Absolutely. With something like that in mind too, one thing I do want to mention, jumping on later on in this as well, is that we are doing a Q&A at the very end of this video, so I am watching it on my phone to see if any questions pop up during that time with Christian and myself talking. If there's any questions that you guys have for either Christian or myself throughout this Q&A video, Taycan live stream, however you want to receive it, feel free to leave your questions in the comments and we'll answer them as we go through the video here. So sorry to cut that out there, but with talking about the driving habits and obviously the engineers jumping into this car, I feel like what the engineers did with it is that they basically developed this ultra-high supercomputer for a vehicle. It's constantly thinking and adapting to not only what the road's habits are, but also the driving habits of the person behind the wheel itself. Your driving habits might be a little bit different from mine as well. Different spirited driving needs each day and out. How does this vehicle drive as a daily driving vehicle, outside the track? It's, obviously you can floor it and it will accelerate like no tomorrow, but as a daily driving vehicle, what does this feel like to you? Like, what does this vehicle, an electric vehicle, feel like in the fleet of Porsches and in the industry that we're in right now?
Well, I mean, it's obviously it's incredibly comfortable. It's got a lot of space for 4 passengers or a 5th in the middle of the back seat. It's a very luxurious people mover if you want it to be. Obviously, it's got a lot of really neat technology that's unique to the Taycan. Certainly, if you look at the interior in a Taycan, it is very different from the rest of the models that we have, because they obviously wanted to set it apart, being it's the first EV that they've produced for public use. So it's a very, very usable day-to-day car, while on the same token providing an incredible level of performance, which is synonymous with pretty much any model that we have, whether you're talking about a 911 or a Cayman or even a Cayenne.
Absolutely.
Even our Cayennes they're SUVs, but they're a wolf in sheep's clothing if you want them to be.
Yeah, definitely a vehicle in disguise. I like the way you put that. With driving habits as well, talking about some of the other crazy things that Porsche's done with this vehicle is over-the-air updates. So with being an electric vehicle, a lot of technology is being put into this vehicle, as we both know, working here, seeing all the different changes that Porsche's done with the Taycan going into it as a new vehicle. And like you mentioned too, a new flagship vehicle for the brand. Just looking at it, it still has that genuine Porsche look with the front arms over the wheel arches and everything, and obviously the silhouette being a signature car, how it's designed and how it looks, but it has a lot of new technology built into it, and a lot of technology that gets updated throughout its life as well with this vehicle. And over-the-air updates are available for this vehicle, which get done built into it. You don't have to plug it in, you don't have to bring it into service or anything like that. Servicing of this vehicle, obviously your regular tire changes going from summer to winter, but when it comes to fixing this or tuning up with that as well, a lot of it is going to be technological updates that Porsche sends out, which makes it a lot easier for consumers as well. If they live in, us being in Edmonton, if they live in Red Deer or Lloydminster or even Oregon, for example, and you have a Taycan, you don't have to bring your vehicle in to get 1 or 2 things touched up. But an over-the-air update can solve those things once they come out and available for the vehicle as well, which makes it a lot easier for consumers jumping into a different vehicle like this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the way of the future for a lot of car companies. So I think that Porsche, along with maybe some of its competitors, are dipping their toes into the water. Where I'm sure that a lot of the other models and brands are going to start to do that as well. But somebody's got to start.
For sure. with, obviously heading things into the future as well, obviously charging your vehicle, it's not like, going to a near gas station. You have to charge your vehicle at a charging station, and those are slowly growing more and more in Alberta. Something that Porsche is doing as a push towards electric vehicles is actually for every dealership in the area, they have to make one charging station per dealership in the area. So Porsche Edmonton is obviously a part of that. You might see charging stations come up that will be free for Porsche owners, for Taycan owners, and obviously hybrid vehicle owners and future flagship EV vehicles that come out in the future for Porsche. They will be freely accessible to Porsche owners, which is a great thing to know about. But obviously, when it comes to the range of vehicles, the Taycan itself gets between 3 and 350 kilometers consistently, and we've seen it obviously go north of 400. Both of you and myself have seen that range hit north of 400 kilometers. With driving with this vehicle, going from colder to winter weather, obviously we just passed our minus 50 weather that Alberta, but
yes,
Edmonton
luckily
is notorious for. What kind of expectations can people expect when jumping into the Taycan or even EV vehicles as a whole when it comes to our minus 50 weather that we have here in Edmonton and in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the temperature ranges that we have here can be very, very extreme, from very extreme hot to very extreme cold. And cold weather does have a tendency to affect a battery state of charge. I mean, we've all left our cell phone inside our vehicle overnight by accident, and when you go to try to fire it up in the morning, it's a frozen brick. So it will affect. I mean, if it's minus 30, minus 40, minus 50, unfortunately some days, certainly that can affect the battery's state of charge and its ability to maintain its output. But it's not Porsche. It's just any EV or hybrid, anything with a battery is affected by extreme cold temperature. One of the nice things that we're starting to see now are, obviously the EPA does its testing on different vehicles to ensure that they're capable of doing fuel economy or range of batteries that the manufacturer claims. The nice thing is we're starting to see, now that the vehicles have been out for a while, we're starting to see independent studies being done. And a lot of people, including myself, actually are quite surprised because, in typical Porsche fashion, Porsche is very conservative with their numbers, whereas a lot of the competition has a tendency to embellish, if I can use that word. Yeah, so I mean, some of the companies out there are saying that they can travel X number of kilometers, which makes us look like, holy cow, we're trailing behind. But then when they actually do real world testing, they're actually finding that we're a lot farther in line with certain manufacturers than we were led to believe, and that's what really matters. Real world testing is where you're going to see what you and I and the Taycan owner will actually experience, not controlled environments that aren't really where we're going to be driving.
Absolutely. Well, I think another thing that comes to mind when it comes to obviously the range of the vehicle, one thing with me is recuperation braking. So I've been fortunate to drive different manufacturers, different competitors, electric vehicles, and really kind of, unintentionally, intentionally kind of compare them in my mind, differences in the Taycan, other manufacturers or other brands as well, to really see the differences. And I think one of the most noticeable, just in the driving habits, would be the recuperation braking, or just how the vehicle stops or slows down and recharges the battery that way. And with the Taycan, I find it's transition from the recuperation braking to using your actual, your brake pads and rotors is quite seamless. Where a lot of our competitor vehicles, you jump into the vehicle, go for a drive, you can let off the gas, and the vehicle will actually lightly brake for you. And then as the vehicle slowing down slightly, to use the recuperation braking to start charging the vehicle gradually. Where the Porsche Taycan doesn't necessarily do that. It'll have you use the braking. Sorry, not use the braking. It'll have you start charging the vehicle through the brakes when you use the brakes, not always on command or when you let off the accelerator.
Yeah, it's just if you've ever driven an EV like you and I both have, they have a very different feel from what we're accustomed to. I mean, with petrol engines, we're used to taking our foot off the accelerator and the vehicle coasts until we apply the brake. Whereas with the EVs that are out there, when you take your foot off the accelerator, it immediately starts to slow down. I mean, it can be adjusted, but it's just a very unnatural feeling. It's you can almost one foot drive the car. You're not really using the brake very much at all. It feels like a golf cart, where as soon as you let off the accelerator, it starts to slow down. It's an unnatural feeling, in my opinion. I don't particularly like that feeling. And Porsche was very cognitive of this when they developed the car. They wanted it to feel like a normal car. They wanted it to feel like a Porsche. So when you're driving the Taycan and you actually remove your foot off the accelerator, or you start to back off the accelerator, the car will coast just like what we're accustomed to in any other normal car. But when you apply the brake, it feels like you're slowing down, like, again, in a normal car or in any Porsche that we would have here, but it's actually not the brakes that are slowing you down. It's quite ingenious what they've done. They're actually using the regenerative braking of the motors to make it feel like you're actually slowing down with the brakes, but you're not. You're actually using the electric motors. The brakes don't actually come into play until you're basically at a full stop, or if, let's say, you're on a racetrack and you're coming really hot into a corner, you might use the brakes just as you're coming into the apex of the corner and then out again, but for the most part, it's just the regenerative braking.
Just the regenerative braking. It's only for that emergency type kind of thing, which is quite attractive to hear about the vehicle, because for people wanting to jump into EVs or wanting to jump into a hybrid, you're definitely looking for a more locally efficient vehicle, and to have it use those refrigeration brakes to get that longer range. It's just another added perspective to really start using more electric components within the vehicle and keep reusing them throughout that. Yeah, that's the last part for us to really discuss with this, Christian. I want to say thank you for doing this live Taycan Q&A and questionnaire conversation that we have. Thank you for your time, and is there anything you'd like to ask or as a comment for anyone to listen to?
No, I mean, thank you guys for watching and listening, and if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out anytime. I'm more than happy to discuss anything that you might want to learn about.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Christian, and thank you everyone to watch, and have a good one.
Great weekend, guys. See ya.